pioneering solutions, transformational technology, and inspirational leaders. I'm your host, Conor Sherman, and this is the Confident Defense Podcast. Welcome to the Confident Defense Podcast. I'm your host, Conor Sherman, and today our guest is Stuart Mitchell. Stuart runs Stott security recruiting practice for all of North America. He's placed security leaders and team members for some of the biggest and best companies across America. His client list is extensive, reaching from high-growth VC-backed startups to Fortune 100 companies, including the likes of Mastercard, CLEAR, Ethos, Airtable, Alex Partners, so on. He runs for charity, he's an advocate for mental wellness, and is actively engaged in building inclusive, high-performance security teams for his clients. Stuart, welcome to the show.
Conor, thank you very much for the intro and the kind words. It's a pleasure to be on.
Thank you. I mean, we've known each other for a couple of years in the professional space. We've always had a good laugh. And one of the things that that really brought us together early days was the fact that I had this desperate need to start building high performance security teams, and the rest of the world just wasn't delivering for me. And then you and I met on that fateful day, and then we've been friends and working together the last couple of years. So before we dive into what an incredible career that you've had and the work that you're doing at Stott, I really wanted to set the table here. Like, one of the things that, as you are, running the security practice for a really reputable security recruiting firm, what is your view on the hiring shortage in cybersecurity? I mean, is it fact? Is it fiction? Or am I going crazy not being able to hire good engineers and instant responders? Is there a bit of bias going on in there? I'll lead you with this. It's like, I was reading this the other day, and it was a publication from Cyberscoop. They said there's going to be a 3 million person shortage in 2021. And I was just, blown away by these numbers, but I'm just like curious, how much is self-inflicted? How much is this real? What are your thoughts on that?
So it is an interesting question. And the answer is, in some ways it's fact, in some ways it's fiction, right? I think there's two ways to look at it. And I think, there's plenty of people in the space who aren't working, by the way, but where they may not fit where the demand is. So the demand, and this is probably something that you see, I would say right now, is exceptionally high in the technical side of security. If we're looking at security engineering at a very high level, if we're talking about application security, cloud security, DevSecOps, all kind of fit in together. If we're talking at like high-end detection and response, if we're looking at, security operations in a modern day center, there is a huge talent shortage, and there's always a war for talent in that space, across any business that's investing in a first-class security program. And this is where businesses struggle to hire. This is where businesses, sometimes get the blank checkbook out because there is such a shortage of exceptional people. That said, on the flip side, there are certain areas of security where the talent shortage is probably fiction, because there are people out there, if we look at probably more sort of traditional areas of security, risk and compliance, network security.
Right.
I feel like there is a little bit more access to talent and probably a few more people who are readily available there. So it's, I guess from a security perspective, we probably skew the numbers. And if we broke them down into like subcategories, I think it would read very, very differently.
Interesting. I think that's an interesting delineation between, if I'll call them, the hard sciences and the soft sciences of security. Right. So the hard sciences, hands-on keyboard, configuring that AWS environment, doing reverse engineering of malware. Those are the talent those are the sector of the market that's short in talent, because it's a hard problem to solve, a harder problem to solve. I don't want to get any hate from my GRC community out there as well. Risk is a difficult topic to handle, but it sounds maybe more accessible, where you can come in with a business degree because you've got an analytics background, versus needing an engineering degree to come in from the other side.
Yeah, I mean, that's my thoughts. And also, I think the rapid evolution of problems on the, should we say, technical side of security, it's changing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Whereas, like, if we're to look at, ISO or NIST, these things change at a slower rate. So I think, the evolution of these technically minded roles rapidly changing and rapidly moving. So if you're not staying current, it is very difficult. And again, we can go into slightly different nuances where companies are looking for people with different programming languages, with different tools, with different, different cloud environments, and that also contributes to the talent shortage is how specific some companies' searches are.
And that's a fair point, right? As we've hit the gas and the accelerator on changes in technology, we've also had to kind of keep up with the defense of that technology, right? And so if your technology is exploding forward and you need your security talent to follow suit, you have to, close an ever increasing gap. Now, one thing I found interesting in this article I was reading, so some analysis based, it was a comment based on inside the Forrester report, which was, and I love the quote, it's just fantastic. It says, too many hiring managers expect to hire MacGyver, but are willing to pay like McDonald's. And I just thought that was a beautiful way of summarizing what was going on with those two. So what are your thoughts on the pay difference? Is the market responding appropriately?
It depends. It really does depend who, right? And we've seen such a growth in this market and salaries that, potentially we wouldn't have heard of 3 or 4 years ago. Some of the market is responding and some of the market isn't, and it's creating quite a disparity. If we look at some of the highest growing businesses in the world, Amazon is always going to pay better than your local credit union. There's any business that's high tech and has a high security risk tolerance, lower security risk tolerance kind of combined is always going to pay more if they have the cash. And so you do see that kind of the best talent follows the money. There is some spillover, and I think one of the most interesting, I guess, divisions here is when I look at the federal space and the government space, where we read numerous articles about, how they probably shouldn't, how the government should be better at cybersecurity and should be more focused on hiring exceptional talent. But if they're paying them 120 grand where someone else is going to pay them 250, at the end of the day, it's very difficult.
That's a hard chasm to cross.
It's a hard sell. And so that's where I see it. And then, if we look at some of the problems that we're facing globally within healthcare, some of the smaller to medium healthcare providers and hospitals, were really, really attacked by bad actors during COVID, right? There were opportunities there for bad actors to get access to data, ransomware, whatever it may be. But the budget is finite, and I think the disparity of some businesses accelerating and paying security engineers more compared to businesses that don't have the resources to do so, it really does kind of create, and that creates that separation of levels of ability because of some of the things that they're working on as well. At the end of the day, the creme de la creme will probably go to the highest paying company that's working on the coolest stuff, and it almost drives the skills gap even further if you think about it.
So that's absolutely true. And one of the things you and I have talked about off camera is this idea of finding talented individuals who may not have the experience as a way to compensate for that. So finding, maybe a DevOps engineer who wants to get into the security space and taking a risk and kind of hiring in someone who's got that sense about them. They have the foundations of technology, and then you teach them, you layer on the security principles on top of that. Is this a technique that hiring managers should be exploring more? What are your thoughts around kind of what are some options and people have to cross this chasm?
So it is absolutely an option and something that I would look at both externally and internally, right? If you've got a team of high performing software engineers or DevOps engineers, and you're looking for one or two, it is an option. It takes a really comfortable and confident manager, both within their ability to teach and also their technical ability to do that. Not everyone is that way inclined, right? Not everyone is comfortable enough to take control of someone else's career completely. So I think that it, takes an exceptionally competent manager to do it. There are tools and options out there specifically geared towards software engineers. I'm not super familiar if there are DevOps engineers that can make that transition. At the end of the day, I think every good application security engineer that you come across will have probably been a software engineer at some point in their life. At least maybe there's some more, the new school might be coming through and becoming an application security engineer straight away. But typically it's, all right, I can make it, now I can break it. And that's kind of what I see for the traditional application security engineer. And you see it now in that DevSecOps space. So going back to where, if they know the fundamentals of DevOps, automation, continuous integration, there is a pretty straightforward transition there. DevOps is also a hard market to find talent as well. So it is, limited, but probably not so much as security. But if you are comfortable, I've seen a few good managers do it, both internally and hiring them externally. But again, it takes a really competent, confident manager to do that.
That makes total sense. Now, I mean, we've talked about this. So let's talk about one of the projects that you and I worked on historically, because I think that was a good showcase in trying to get creative in building a security team that was tailored for the needs of a particular company. We've talked about, there is a shortage, and there is certainly a shortage on the hard skill side. And you and I experienced that as we worked together a few years ago, and then more recently now at Cyber Defense Group, we definitely see that shortage there. But this particular project was the one we did at CLEAR, where I was building a security consulting firm. CLEAR Biometric Security was a client of ours, and they had this absolute need, right, to build a top tier, high performance security program. And we really went from a few individuals to a team of 20 plus, peaking about 25 at one point, to satisfy the company objectives that they had for reaching and really transforming their security posture almost overnight. And so I remember that when I, kind of got this mandate to, okay, we're going to go do this almost impossible task, which was achieve the FISMA moderate and then a FISMA high, which CLEAR operates at now, which is the highest level of oversight that the federal government has on private corporations. Is the NIST 853 controls at the level high. I mean, this is a status like Google and Microsoft and stuff, right? So to achieve that in the period of hitting these milestones in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months was an incredible feat. But to do that, I needed a team of 20 plus people. And I remember when we got started on this project, I was like, there's no way one recruiting company can help me with this. There's no way that I go to one guy and he's going to be able to give me technical writers, engineers, incident responders, GRC guys. So I remember opening it up to 4 recruiting firms to give me the volume that I need, and nobody could keep pace. Like, you were delivering exactly who I needed instantly, and it just totally outpaced all the other recruiting firms who were slow, and they had less multi-process step and this, that, and the other. You're just like, here's the person you need. Here's the person you need. I understand what you're looking for. Here's the candidate you need. So I'd love just to kind of unpack that and just tell me, what was it like being on the other side of that, or the CLEAR project? What was it like to find 25 qualified candidates? There had to be a much larger pool that you were fishing from, and developing those relationships over the years. Like, how does that work?
So it's probably not as easy as you made it sound there. So just so you know as well, I did this single-handedly. I think I had one or two that were kind of tossed my way by team members, but for the most part, I did this single-handedly. Look, I think the most important thing for us being successful in this project was really taking some time with yourself and the other stakeholders really early on. I was very deliberate in some of the questions I asked, some of the hard metrics that we had to understand. At the end of the day, I don't know that if everyone was the exceptional fit on paper, but it was I think we got a really good understanding of what, everyone bought into that focus of, all right, we need to achieve this goal. And I think, for the most part, 90% of those team members were really bought into what CLEAR were doing and excited about contributing to that journey. So for me, it was getting the right DNA with, exceptional competency, that I had leveraged from, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm very active in public forums. I'd almost been kind of building for a project like this for a while, and they happen, at this pace and at, that volume. Probably a few times in my career have I seen such aggressive volume. Mm-hmm. but I'm always ready for that call. And so, you know, when things started to fall in place, you know, I just continued to accelerate. And I think I remember there was one day where you pulled the trigger on 7 people in one day. You're like, yes, 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 yes.
They were all the right people. I'm like, I couldn't believe it. Right? I got this whole stack of resumes, and I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what I need.
But also just, I think one of the biggest things was, you know, we continued, the momentum was really good. Hiring experience is everything, right? Pace is everything.
Yeah.
I think the candidates really enjoyed everyone they spoke to throughout the hiring process. We were quick with feedback, quick with offers, you know, quick with next steps. It was completely seamless. You know, you and I think at the most aggressive point, were in touch every morning. I think we had a daily
stand-ups on trying to get the right people in.
For about 3 weeks when we were in, you know, real mission critical. You know, we had a very slick project management tool. Know you're a huge Trello fan. It was exceptionally simple. Everything was visible. And yeah, initially I could see that there were other agencies, you know, it was a shared platform for other people to see. And I think we'd hired 4 people before I saw another resume from another agency. So I felt pretty good about it. But I think, you know, if you're realistic about how you set up, it is possible. And I think, you know, you set what was a very difficult task. You know, we broke down into bite-sized chunks. How many resumes do we need to see a day? How much time do you have to interview them? What's the next step on everyone? And we just really drove into it. And you basically became a project manager for hiring for, I don't know how you did your day job as well, because you basically became a hiring project manager for about 2 or 3 weeks. And it was
metrics and process, that's it.
Yeah. But it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. And, you know, I think that even 2 years ago, I think there's a few people still on there as contracting, and you know, a lot of people converted to full-time employees. And I think for the most part, everyone really enjoyed the project. And I would like to think it was a successful. Well, I mean, I know it was successful.
We achieved the objective. We transformed the culture of security inside an organization that's already innovative, already fast-paced, and like CLEARs themselves are tackling wonderfully complex and innovative problems. We have a security team that matches, and they achieve the highest standard federal government can put your way. I call that project a success, you know?
Yeah.
And that has to come with the quality of talent that's there, right? You don't keep bad talent, you know? Let's say we made a mistake, they wouldn't have lasted very long. We would have walked, you know, and made quick decisions on reversing those. So the fact that like they all stayed, they're part of the culture, and we have where we are, it's just a testament to the quality that we had day one. So like I said, it's a fun project.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but to your point, I think like when I look at hiring, and now also as we're staffing up for cyber defense group and we're looking at all that, one of the things I found is just like being really clear up front with what is you use that word right at the beginning, like DNA. What is the security culture DNA that you want to emulate? Because, you know, if I can convey that to you, the soft bits, the soft skills, the what is the mission of the company, all of those components, I think that's where the magic is, right? It's your ability to convert that and then look at someone's LinkedIn profile and say, this person's worth my time, this person's not worth my time, like, because they are showing me signs of that DNA and then pulling on those candidates. So having that, like that culture DNA conversation up front, and then of course, super simple process, rapid feedback, and then targeting, you know, job spec so candidate to hiring in under 2 weeks. I mean, that was my metric. I'm not sure if that's the industry metric, but being able to move really quickly on the right people.
It's definitely not. It's an aggressive metric, and look, it's absolutely feasible, and even more so in the era of remote interviews. Even a 3-step process, right? And that's pretty typical. 3-step process, bang, 1 phone call, 3 days later, 1, you know, second technical phone call, bang, third, you know, 3 days later should be a virtual panel or virtual on-site or what people are doing. And then you should move to offer. Speed is everything. I feel like some businesses think that recruiters are playing this as a tactic to move quickly. But I think, you know, whenever I'm in a situation of buying, you know, if I want to buy a house, if I want to buy a car, you know, if I want to take a job, momentum is everything, right? And I think the quicker you move through a process, the more excited someone is. I think you have to be realistic. You can't offer them out the back. So it's like, whoa, that's a serious decision. But, keeping them excited and keeping them engagement. I've worked with customers where it's like, cool, let's schedule them for an on-site in 3 weeks. Like, it's very difficult.
They won't be on the market in 3 weeks.
Exactly. And if they are, it's a concern. It could be someone who's just window shopping, or it could be someone who's not as good as you think. And also they're probably not as excited. If someone pitched me a role 3 weeks ago, I have to kind of re-rack my brains. Like, okay, so what was the spec again? Security architect. Was it Azure or AWS? I can't really remember. So kind of strike while the iron's hot, I think is really important. I just want to go back to as well is, having the DNA point, right? And I think this is where this is probably where I would bring the most value as a recruitment partner to most businesses. I've been doing this for a long time, and there's a lot of people in the security space on LinkedIn, on their resume, that look very similar. One thing that I've been successful with is understanding what kind of person would do well in a certain environment. How many times have I called you up and saying, look, this person on paper is not great, but I need you to talk to this person because you're going to love the way they think. They actually probably underselling themselves a little bit. I need you to talk to them. I think they're fantastic. But if I just sent you a resume, I don't know if you'd have spoken to them.
I know of one person that jumped to mind exactly. And right now he's there still transforming the Splunk experience that this company has every single day. Because you and I had this conversation. I'm like, I'm looking for this. You gave me someone else. And then I'm like, you're right. He's the perfect cultural fit. He'll grow to fit the role. He's like that. And then he loves it. He's crushing it at his role. The company's getting tons of value. And there we are. So it's that ability to connect on a DNA level. I think, yes, that is the most important piece.
Agreed.
Now, one of the things that we've talked about here is, finding the right talent starts with DNA. Locking them in is all about speed. But the question is, how do we retain talent, right? We're seeing a lot of this. Like if we go at the highest level, the CISO, the tenure used to be 2 years. Now it's coming into like 17 months. So there's something going on at the CISO level where people aren't sticking around at the executive level. Now, even at the engineering level and at the architect level, I'm starting to sense that might be contagious. I could be reading into the market, but I definitely see tenures are getting shorter. And so what should we as companies that are trying to hire and build these great teams be thinking about when we want to retain this talent that we've just gone through the process of onboarding?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think, it kind of varies from leadership to engineering and architecture. I would say in leadership, a lot of people take the wrong jobs. And that's why the tenure is low. There's plenty of false promises for security leaders, particularly I would say in newer CISO roles. So first CISO, first head of security. I think there's a lot of businesses that are trying to, particularly in tech, trying to lose the CISO title and bring in a head of security or VP or director, but not give them the true C title at, in these tech firms. And it's a lot of false promises. You'll be given X budget, you'll be given, headcount of 10. And I don't see the follow through. And this is pretty typical, I think, in the space. Like, look, I was promised this. I think some of that is self-reflection, right? If, I want something in writing, if you're going to hire me to do this, don't set me up to fail. Right. It's a case of, I think sometimes you have to have some accountability. Retaining engineering and architecture talent is hard. And I think the biggest thing that you need to do, I guess the toughest thing that you have to compete with is people like me and also just other firms that are...
Well, nobody wants to compete against you, Stuart. You always win.
I do have a competition problem. But, if you're known to be building a security engineering or a security architecture team that's exceptionally high performing, I can think of a few in New York, I can think of a few in the Bay Area that I'm like, all right, I know they hire exceptional people. That's a target for me for one of my customers because I know they hire exceptional people. The biggest thing is you have to if you create a culture of exceptional people, You know, if you look at some of the biggest tech brands, I know that Uber, Lyft, Cruise Automation in the Bay Area hired exceptional security people. If you surround them with other exceptional security people, they don't want to leave. They don't want to go work with a
Yes.
bunch of idiots over there because they're used to working at such a high level. But they're also compensated fairly. And I think, you know, reality is you have to be flexible compensating your security team. I think, you know, don't blank check and don't lose sight of the value that they're giving, but also, you know, you have to be competitive with the market. The reality is if you're underpaying someone and you know it, they're probably going to leave. Like if you've got a good deal on someone.
Yeah, if you got a good deal, that's a red flag because, and I saw this with COVID was happening, right? So a lot of organizations were, when COVID hit really hard, a lot of organizations were forced to make decisions on who they're keeping, who they're cutting. And in many of those cases, security teams reduced down to 40% is what I've seen in some teams, right? Yeah. So they're down to 40%. Well, that other 60% is on the market and they need something now to, you know, pay the mortgage. So if somebody was to turn to one of those and say, great, we just got this person at a $50,000 a year discount. Well, once things open back up and get more stable, they're not hanging around to build their careers where their baseline of salary is so low. So yeah. I sensed that early days that people were taking advantage of that. And I'm like, that is so short-sighted because now if you get someone on a deal and market gets back to where it should be, it kind of rebounds and they move on, the company that just hired them has to spend all that money again, going through the search process, spending all that time interviewing, doing all that. Like, so you end up losing money over the course of the calendar year had you just not just hired the right person at the right pay for the right role. That's my experience.
And I completely agree. I have, you know, I had someone fortunate enough that I managed to move out of Cruise Automation into another business. And I said, look, this is where the offer needs to be. Doesn't matter if they're on the market. If you underpay them, and to be honest, they had no plan to, but I just said, look, if you underpay this person and they'll be gone in 2 or 3 months if someone doesn't come along with an offer now, because I do feel like the market is leveling out. I do feel like we're getting to not pre-COVID, but certainly, not 40% either. So we are seeing growth again. Hiring was surprisingly high in May I don't have the stats for security, but across the country was way higher than it was supposed to be. And I assume that security fell in line with that. If you take advantage, you'll end up with egg on your face. Matter of the fact is there's plenty of good security recruiters that will be sniffing around and will know if someone's underpaid. There's also plenty of companies, I could look around 70% of tech firms and enterprise businesses in the US and know what they're paying from a security engineering, security architecture perspective. If I get the sense that you're below that, you're making me money.
Blood in the water for a shark. Exactly.
That's it, right? So if I know someone should be on $175,000 and they tell me they're on 125, I'll just tell them, because some people don't know it. Some people made bad decisions, and some people are underpaid. So for someone like me, that you're right, it is red rag to a bull, but I also think they should be fairly compensated in line with the market. And, I've worked with plenty of exciting, innovative businesses that will pay them their worth.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's it, right? There are plenty of people who are changing them out. And that goes back to something we talked about, is building a team of innovation that's driving value for the organization. Now, a cyber defense group, we're partnering with a lot of high growth cloud native organizations, and we are augmenting, or in some cases, we are the security team for these companies. But one of the things that we're doing differently, but we're like, why is no one else doing this, is tying the security objectives to the top line objectives. If the business needs to move into a regulated space, cool, focus on getting those, achieving those compliance levels, whether it be something as simple as PCI to as complex as a FedRAMP certification. Enable your security team to drive value for the company. Or it's, we want to bring a new product to market. Well, we've helped another company. They build components within their SOC, like looking for fraud, became its own product. And then the company just resold this as a fraud detection thing inside their platform as an added bonus, right? So there are ways to take the security program, the innovative culture that you may develop there, tie it to the top line of the business, and then allow them to be in alignment with one another so that everybody's winning, and it's, really is left hand holding right hand and everyone's getting across the finish line together. It's like, what are your thoughts on, are you seeing that happen more and more? Are you seeing organizations being able to leverage their security team, or security teams being in alignment with the business? Or is there still a delay there where we're focused on different priorities?
Yes to both, depending on the organization. I truly think that there are, so this falls completely in line with leadership and where they've positioned themselves within the business. There's plenty of businesses where security sit in the corner, there's no overlap, they hit their regulations, and they do the status quo. And that's not an innovative security team. That's kind of do your ABCs, change your password, set up MFA, really underwhelming stuff, but the hygiene stuff. I do see, particularly I would say in modern and younger style, like younger businesses, I see that culture of innovation. Innovation within security is really important, and that goes back to having like curious minded, get the DNA back to curiosity. If you're hiring people, you want to hire curious minded people that want to do new stuff, and I think good security people kind of have that mindset of wanting to do things a new way, or create something new, or break something in a different way and bend the rules. Innovation is bending the rules, right? Innovation is,
you're supposed to be pushing the boundary. If it's safe, you're doing it wrong, right?
Innovation is doing something that hasn't been done or is new. Security DNA mindsets is to do it the way that you're not supposed to do it, which tends to create new rules. So I think there is a really good way to do it. I've seen certain businesses that really align, and there's certain businesses that bake security into their code, and have that security security mindset in their software engineering team, and that spin over, and that's when you win. If you can create a culture of security by design, privacy by design, that's the end goal, right? And that's you see that in some businesses, not in many, but that's allowing security and engineering to work together, as opposed to certain
opposed to what
businesses.
it's been for a long time. Security is the office of no, and security shows up and says you can't do this at the last minute. So to your point, that's what works. That's the only thing that works, actually, in my opinion, is if you can say, okay, engineering team, what's your process from the conception of an idea to launching it to the market, right? Like, okay, that's called the CICD pipeline. That's the current term. That's the current technical expression of the SDLC. So now we have that on paper. You're like, cool. What are all the checkpoints, and how do we automate a security analysis in there, and then partner with security in there? Going as far as to say, if you have a development squad, the model I love best is if you have a development squad who's tackling, durable projects, take an AppSec engineer, pop them in there. And so they're just part of the daily stand-ups, they're part of that. And then they're iteratively working together. They know the product, they know the mission objectives, and they're working. And you just repeat and scale that model out. And then at a technical level, you're doing the exact same thing. You're saying, what is the process that I need? Integrate it technically, and then enable your engineers, your DevOps, or your operations team to have transparent access to the security tools. They're intelligent. They know what to do, and you just coach them through the analysis and help them make better decisions. So, but that idea of like integrating a security team both at a culture level and a technical level and a business level, I think if any organization is not doing that today, I would always encourage them to pause, reflect, say, why aren't we doing this today? And then get after it and start fixing that problem, because that's the only way the new modern companies are going to survive, is if security is baked in at all three different layers of that.
I agree.
And that goes back to innovation. It's like you can't move quickly and you can't move laterally if you're not staying agile. And one of the ways to stay agile is stay connected, right? And to stay deeply embedded in that process. But I hope to see more companies kind of adopt that framework, and more security leaders be comfortable with that too. I still see hesitancy from the CISO community. Maybe the old guard that might be passing, but there's definitely a sense that we still want the office of no. And of course, it's not said that way, but we want the office of no. We want the final approval. We want the report and the PowerPoint before we release the production. that's just not how it's done, nor can it ever go back to that. Yeah.
And there's also the flip side of, empowering, and I see this mostly in the Bay Area, empowering CTOs above security, which then, the engineering product teams are here and the security teams are slightly seen below that. And then it's a case of, you get culture of us and them and superiority disorders, etc. So I think it comes out of both leadership functions, and that's why I think it's important to have kind of CISO, CTO same level, because then everyone's operating on the same playing field.
Yes. And that also goes back to that kind of worrying statement that you said about where CISOs seem to be getting downgraded in newer companies for whichever particular reason, where they're getting downgraded in the sense that they're not holding an executive title, they're holding a VP level or a head of, because that keeps them away from the executive table. If you have your security, your technology, your marketing, your sales, your finance, all around all reporting to the executive board, all in lockstep and alignment of how we're going to achieve these objectives, that just seems healthier to me. And from my experience, has worked far better. But yeah, so to see organizations going this route where security is becoming, I'm going to call it a feature set of engineering, versus what it should be is an enabling partner of the engineering function.
Yeah, agreed.
So if you were to help the audience here understand, like when it comes to innovation, building that culture, are there any particular events beyond alignment, which we've talked about? Are there any particular things that we should be looking out for? Is it the style of people that we're hiring? Is it where they're placed in the organization? What are some of the structural things that we could be doing as we're building these teams so we have more innovative security and thus more innovative security companies?
So I think it's good to hire people that you haven't typically hired sometimes, from a mindset perspective, to create new things. If you always hire the same model and DNA of someone, you're going to get the same results. So if you hire someone with less experience but really creative minding, if you hire someone from a completely different organization that wouldn't necessarily, someone from that works from an e-commerce platform, and you're a healthcare business, there's so much of the hiring that I see is, let's bring someone in from a similar company who's done something similar so that they can come in and plug and play.
I saw that in finance all the time. It was like, we only want to hire asset management security professionals. I'm like, in Boston, like that is a tiny market, right? Versus
it's a tiny market. And it's also, you're just getting the same level of thought, because that innovation, that creative mindedness, because you're not giving someone who has different perspectives or different mindsets. So I think, no one wants to bank their career on, an unknown, but if you're building a security team of 15 or 20 people, which, we see, what's to say you don't go 3 outside the box hires or 5 outside the box hires, which is, okay, we're going to hire two kids out of school who are fresh, great ideas, might have done an internship in security, but they're going to come in and we're going to empower them to have fresh, innovative ideas, things that we wouldn't think of because we've been working for 10 or 15 years and, we've lost the rose out of our cheeks, or the real, kind of super positive mindset, because you've seen the highs and lows of security.
You could say we're bitter. We're old bitter guys. I get it.
We're all bitter. Exactly. So, those fresh perspectives and new ideas. And then, hey, we're going to hire someone, from a different industry or, with a slightly different tech stack feature that can come in and bring fresh ideas. The continuation of hiring the same DNA / type person / type experience is just going to bring you continuous results. And you don't get innovation you can get innovation, but you don't get fresh innovation from the same.
That's fair. Yeah.
DNA.
We're getting a slightly different variation, different verse, same song, and it's changing over time, versus sometimes when you throw out the songbook and really have a diversity of thought in our teams, right? And have that blended portfolio where people are not all homogenous and harmonious, where there's sometimes positive conflict, right? We want to solve it one way. Hey, we want to go open source. No, we want to go off the shelf. I don't know, a very simple example. Hey, we want to solve this problem in Ruby. No, we want to solve it in Python. I vote Python. So what are your thoughts about that? Let's talk about that for a second. Diversity of thought. That is something that is not only a timely event, but something that has been struggling really in the security community for a long time, right? We're really we are solving a lot of the same, we're trying to solve the same problems the same way over and over. I mean, that's kind of, part of that's because we still haven't solved the fundamentals. Like, we know how to solve most of the attacks. It comes back to hygiene, having good metrics and having executive presence on the security team. If you did that, like, you would help most organizations get like 60% of the way there. And we're still struggling with that as an industry, as a collective, achieving that. But I think maybe the solution here is not to just keep pounding our head against the wall over and over again, but it is to say, okay, this isn't working. How do we have a more inclusive way of solving this? How do we have a set of diverse thoughts about how tackling this problem, and come up with a different way of defending modern organizations? So what are your thoughts on, building that culture that has that diversity of thought?
It's pretty simple, and it's a topic that's on everyone's lips right now. Diversity of thought. You need diverse hires to create diverse thought.
Yes.
Look, if you look at most security conferences, if you look at most security organizations, the long and the short of it is white male, probably then Asian male, and then like quite a big gap to anything else. And whilst I also don't want to preach about we're two white males, I don't want to preach about diversity for too long. I'm proud to partner with and have placed and work with, businesses that do champion diversity. Stott and May as a business are very good, particularly I would say on our women in technology arm. We're close to 50% female, which I'm pleased to say globally. I think we're 43%. But, from a diversity perspective, you can't get different thoughts if you don't make different hires. So for the thoughts to change, the people need to change. And it's something that is kind of at a very foundational level, and it's something that kind of has to happen sort of earlier in people's careers. But we do need to be more conscious about the hires that we make within security and outside of security as well, because to champion diversity, to then get more diverse thought, to then get more diverse teams, and diverse thought really does create excellence. So huge champion in it, and we need to be making those hires to create those teams and create those cultures.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And that is something we're seeing, right? And to bring this back to a purely, defender versus adversary, we see the adversary innovating all the time. We see the adversary coming after us all the time, new tools, new techniques, new procedures, and then we're defending using the same tools, the same procedures, the same techniques, and just trying to do them over and over again. So from a just simple cat and mouse adversary defender, we're losing the battle. Then we layer on, there's a bunch of there's the whole social impact of us trying to redo this pattern over and over again, where we don't have an inclusive work environment. We don't have an environment that has diversity of our teams, and we don't have diversity of thought across that. So we need diverse backgrounds to solve these problems. So we need different styles and backgrounds and behaviors that will, of thought that will bring us to solving these technical problems. So, one of the things, you and I have talked about it previously, but it's I'd like to just dive in, what are some of the cultural changes? I mean, you have a very loud voice on LinkedIn. You're often always championing the good stuff, but you're very often top of the feed. You're often got a lot of people who are listening to what you're saying when it comes to LinkedIn and other social platforms. And you and I have had some dialogues around what are some potential things that we could be doing at a structural level within cybersecurity to help fix this problem. And it's one thing to champion the positive, the upside and the objective we want to achieve. It's quite another to say, okay, this is what we think we should change. Here's the structural levers that we need to move to fix this problem. So what are some of your thoughts on how we might change the structure of hiring in cybersecurity from the executive level down to the engineers?
Yeah, so I think, and myself included, we need to be building more diverse talent pools, which tends to come from an education / layer one perspective, which is vitally important. Something that I've kind of sounded out, and this, it's not something that I've really given super deep thought, but I watch a lot of sport. And one of the things that I see in coaching in the United States is the Rooney Rule. So for those of you that aren't familiar with that terminology, when there is a coaching vacancy in the United States, someone of color is interviewed for said posting.
That's fascinating. As someone who's a total not jock and a total nerd who doesn't spend much time watching news, I didn't know about that. So so the Rooney Rule is every time there's a vacancy, someone of color has to, by law, be interviewed for that job as well.
Correct. And I'm not sure, I think it's just at the coach and professional level. Again, I don't know the ins and outs, but I believe at a college and a professional level, someone of color has to be interviewed for each coaching role. Look, there's probably plenty of ins and outs to this, but I don't see both from a person of color, but also from a women in security perspective, why something similar to this couldn't be rolled out. Ultimately it will create more diverse talent pools, and hopefully create more, I would say, diverse environments, which is what we're all moving for. But yes. I think, there has to be, I don't want to say everyone's aware of the problem from a diversity perspective, because there are, plenty of people that will turn blind eyes to these problems. I will continue to try and listen and try and educate myself to be better and to do better. But look, I think talking about it is one thing, and action is something completely secondary. But if there was a model like this, I don't see how it would be a negative to make sure that people are considered in any way.
It seems deceptively simple, right? It's just like to implement something like this. And so, yeah, to your point, I think it's a fascinating idea. I definitely want to go explore that. Maybe in the process, I'll accidentally watch some football as well in the process. But on a more serious note, I think it's like a structural change like this is what's needed. I certainly need to spend more time educating myself on the problem, and more, I think, just listening to the problem, right? As somebody who has never experienced what is systemic racism in America, I've never experienced that. I have a lot more to learn than I have to give on this particular topic. And so I think that I certainly will. And I think this is a fascinating idea, just having a structural change. I like to see, even if we just implemented the CISO level, where our heads of security had to have X amount of hires, interviews that met that type of rule before we made the decision. I think it'd be fascinating, and fascinatingly positive, not like some intellectual idea. Like, I think it'd have tremendous positive changes in the industry.
Yeah, and look, I think there'd be plenty of champions for it. Again, there's always, and I don't want to speak for everyone or even the majority of people, but I feel like as an industry, we are receptive to change for the most part. And, I would like to see people following examples, as I have done in, what's been a challenging couple of months. And I've seen plenty of people that, have stepped up and respect and I really like them for it. But, change is good. And I feel like we could, this something that would be as solid and physical as this and rigid as this would only create positive impact.
I couldn't agree more. Now, one of the things, so I wish I want to put a bow on that, just kind of let that hang in the air, because it is a weighty topic and it warrants further action, right? Conversation step one and action step closely followed behind it. But one of the things that I've known you've been a big advocate for over the years is mental wellness as well. And particularly when it comes to depression and other things, and the cybersecurity community having an impact on that. And so it's just, something that I've seen more and more come to the surface is this idea that, security professionals kind of on 24/7, you're dealing with an adversary who's actively taking you down, and that leads to, and we go back to the hiring conversation we were having earlier, where roles are misaligned and the expectations aren't set as well. I was just wondering if, like last year, before COVID, you were running marathons and supported some organizations. If you wouldn't mind just giving a shout out to that topic and some of the work that you've done there.
Yeah, so it's something that is pretty close to me, and has had pretty people that I know and love have really suffered with mental health and particularly depression issues. So for me to try and be an active champion in that space and share for people to be, a little bit more vocal. I fundraise where I can. I think one of the biggest things was kind of lending a helping hand, because there are a ton of, particularly in the UK, my friends got pretty impacted with COVID. So, wanted to offer some fiscal relief where possible. But yeah, have ran on behalf of charities that, are pretty active in depression awareness, which I think, we've come a long way even over these last few years, kind of dealing with mental health challenges, and, again, huge advocate for it. But I would always, one of the biggest things that I would say to security professionals, as well as people in sales, as well as people in my line of work, is learn how to separate. It's something that I'm trying to do and be better at. We're in an era now where emails never stop, work never stops. You can't complete security. Just like I can't complete recruitment or staffing. There's still more jobs that need to be filled. There's still more companies that I need to bring on board as targets. There's still more candidates that I need to find. You can't complete security. It's just impossible. So that ability to separate and take some time with loved ones, with nature, with the gym, with, whatever it needs to be, find your vice and turn your phone off.
That's fantastic. And I know yours is golf, so it's
have a minute.
Exactly. When it's not running and it's not, doing more aggressive sports, let's call it that way, whether it be football or soccer. So football in your case. So Nate, thank you for a great conversation. I mean, we've touched a lot, from everything from hiring to how we create cultures of innovation. So I can imagine a lot of people are going to look for yourself. They're going to try and reach out to build these innovative security teams. Where's the best place for them to reach you?
I live on LinkedIn. I would like to say I'm probably one of the most active people in LinkedIn within the security community. It's where I've built a really strong culture, and so follow me on LinkedIn. It's Stuart Mitchell. Pretty easy to find, and would love to connect with each and every one of you on a one-to-one basis, via video, via phone call. Hopefully at some point in the not too distant future, maybe even face to face. But yeah, LinkedIn is where I live, where I thrive. So come and find me there.
Fantastic. And I'll add the direct link to your profile in the show notes, along with your email. So if people want to reach out and connect, because I'm sure they will. So again, Stuart, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a fascinating conversation.
Thanks, Conor. Really enjoyed it.